Have you ever died? I don't mean physically. I mean that feeling when you no longer belong here, like you've slipped out of this world, like a speck of dust carried away by a wind it once called home. It was just a harmless slip, a fall on the ice on what should have been an ordinary morning. But that fall opened a door for me, a door into a place beyond time, beyond fear, beyond the body. There was no blood, no screaming, no flashing ambulance lights like in the movies. I simply vanished. Everything went dark, and yet strangely, I had never seen more clearly. I had no eyes, but I could see, no ears, yet I could hear. I didn't know where I was, and yet I knew deeply that I was somewhere I had once belonged. So what is that place? An illusion? The afterlife? Or the truth we've forgotten in the noise of this life? If you've ever feared death, if you've ever cried quietly because you couldn't quite figure out who you are in this world, then what comes next may take that fear away. My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm a community nurse, a single mom to a little girl, someone who tries her best to be kind, to keep things together, and who believed, for a long time, that if I just did everything right, life wouldn't hurt me. Every morning I made coffee, brushed Emma's hair, and rushed out the door to the sound of a late alarm. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a victim. I was just an ordinary person trying way too hard to survive in a world that felt too loud and too cold. I used to think emotions were a weakness. I trained myself to hold back tears when I was hurt, to smile through parent-teacher meetings alone, to nod when a patient died and then pick up their chart like nothing had happened. I was the one who listened to everyone else's pain, but never permitted myself to admit I was in pain too. I was afraid of looking weak, fearful of being a burden, afraid that if I ever let go, everything would fall apart. From the outside, my life looked fine. A steady job, a sweet child, a clean apartment with beige curtains, and an old armchair where I'd sit each night with a cup of tea and a silence I couldn't quite name. But what lived inside me? A quiet voice, faint and persistent like a heartbeat in the dark, asking, "Is this all there is? Is this what life is supposed to be? And who am I in the middle of all this?"
I had gotten used to ignoring that question, until one winter morning, when the pavement turned slick like glass, and I stepped onto it just like any other day. Only this time, I didn't get back up. And in that very moment, I began to enter a place where every definition I had about myself, about pain, about love, started to unravel. But the thing that shocked me most wasn't death. It was the life I discovered after. You think you know what emotion is? Then get ready, because what comes next will take you to a place where emotion isn't something you feel anymore. It's something you become. I don't remember exactly how the fall happened. I just remember crossing the same street I always did, medical kit in hand, when I heard a faint sound beneath my foot. The slip, a soft crack, not painful, not alarming, followed by absolute silence. I felt my body tilt in the air, like a leaf drifting slowly in cold wind. I didn't resist. I didn't have time to be afraid. I just wasn't there anymore. There was no light, no angels, no gates of heaven. Just darkness, a thick, dense darkness where I couldn't tell if I was standing, lying down, or floating. And yet, strangely, I wasn't afraid. I didn't panic. It didn't feel like death. It felt more like being returned to some original, untouched state. No form, no gender, no name. In that space, I could still see, though I had no eyes. I could still hear, though I had no ears. But what I heard wasn't sound. It was a sensation. It was as if everything in that realm was speaking to me without words, through some kind of pure knowing. I didn't hear sentences. I felt the truth. Everything around me seemed to whisper, "Welcome home." I didn't know who I was in that moment, but I knew I existed. And not just existed, I was expanding. With each imagined breath, I felt myself stretching out in all directions. No boundaries. I was the space. I was everything. I was wind. I was water. I was light before it took shape. And I remember thinking, or maybe feeling, if this is death, then maybe we've misunderstood it entirely. There was no judgment, no list of wrongs, no painful memories replaying, only a profound understanding that every emotion I had ever felt, from rage to numbness, from silent tears to clenched smiles, they all carried the same message. See me. I, too, am part of love.
I saw myself again, not through eyes, but through vibration. A gratitude exploded from the deepest part of me as I realized that everything I had once rejected in myself, the weak moments, the emotional swings, all of it was sacred. None of it was wrong. None of it made me less. They were doorways back to who I truly was, doors I had kept shut for years out of fear of being called too emotional. I didn't want to return. Truly. If anyone has ever said, "I'm not afraid of dying anymore," I understand them now. Not because I was brave, but because in that place there was nothing left to fight. You didn't need to be loved because you were love. You didn't need to be seen because you were already part of everything. But then, as I drifted in that formless, boundless, timeless state, a sound rose from the depth of all emotion, a whisper, soft yet unmistakably powerful. What about my daughter? Just that. A single thought, a single truth, and I was pulled back like a whirlwind drawing scattered stardust home. I knew returning would hurt. I knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I couldn't leave her behind. Have you ever wondered what could make a soul floating in eternity choose to return to a body filled with pain and limitation? The answer doesn't come from the mind. It comes from someplace deeper. And that's where the next part will take you. The moment I thought of my daughter, an invisible force pulled me back, but instead of falling, I dissolved. There was no longer a me as an individual, there was only a me melting into light. And for the first time, I felt what pure love truly is. Not the kind of love we usually talk about, not the thrill, the dependency, the desperate urge to hold on to someone. This was different. It was a vibration so pure it had no name. It didn't come from anyone, nor was it directed toward anyone. It was the air, the drifting particles of light. It was me. It was you. It was everything that had always been there, even when we were too busy to notice. And I understood something. Every emotion I had ever felt in my life was not meaningless. Even the deepest wounds, the time I screamed alone in the bathroom, the times I held my breath so my daughter wouldn't see me cry, all of those moments weren't erased or judged. They were embraced, held gently in the gaze of something ancient, forgiving, and deeply familiar, something that felt like home. And I was shown, not through words, but through direct knowing, that emotions aren't meant to be controlled or avoided. They are signals, the language of the soul. Letters written in vibration, sent every day from the deepest part of who we are. When I felt anger, it was a cry for help from a boundary that had been crossed. When I felt sadness, it was my soul knocking on the door. When I felt alone, it was the echo of love I hadn't yet given to myself. I used to think I was just an overly emotional person. But now I know I was simply someone who had never been taught how to listen to emotions without shame. I wasn't broken. I was just never held. Then I was shown moments from my life, not in a life review, the way people often describe it, but as pulses, vibrations, choices, overlooked emotions still alive, still moving inside me like a living emotional ecosystem. I saw the times I said, "I'm fine," when I was falling apart. I saw the look in Emma's eyes, my daughter, when I snapped at her, not out of anger, but exhaustion, and then hid in the kitchen to cry, blaming myself. And then came a voice, not in sound, not in form, but unmistakably clear. No emotion is wrong, only unheard. I broke down. I realized that if I didn't return, Emma would grow up with a mother who hid her emotions, who carried everything on her shoulders, who lived as if weakness was something to be ashamed of. She would learn to ignore her tears, to be strong in all the wrong ways, to live the way I had lived without ever truly living. I couldn't let that happen, not because I was brave, but because I had just seen a truth too deep to unsee. Love is not about holding on to what feels good. It's about learning to embrace everything, even the parts that are messy and flawed. In that radiant realm, I asked, how do I live differently? How do I carry this truth with me when I go back? And the answer came, soft as breath. Feel. Stop running. Stop fearing. Every emotion is the path home. I used to think returning to this world would feel like a sentence, but now I understand that coming back with the gift of empathy is the mission. And if I can live without fearing my emotions, maybe Emma can learn that too. Maybe you can too. Then I began to fall, not in panic, but like a petal drifting gently back to the earth. And as the light dimmed, I knew what came next wasn't magic. It was reality. It was pain. It was waking up in a body bruised and broken.
But you won't believe what happened when I opened my eyes. I don't know how long I was falling. In that space, time didn't exist. There was only one feeling. I was coming back. And as the light slowly faded into the distance, I felt a pressure on my chest, not suffocating, but like a force echoing from reality. My body was receiving my soul like a shattered vessel trying to hold a rushing stream. It was stiff, cold, and confined, but I didn't panic because I remembered why I chose to return. Emma. My 10-year-old girl with eyes that always seemed to be searching, as if she was looking for something in me that she couldn't quite name. I remembered that look. I remembered the nights she slipped into my room just to ask, "Mom, are you sad?" And I always said, "No, I'm fine," even when I was drowning inside. I had lived as if hiding my sadness was the best way to love. But I was wrong. Love isn't about hiding. Love is about being there. It's about showing your child that pain doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. I didn't come back because I was afraid of dying. I didn't come back because I thought I had some great mission left unfinished. I came back because I realized if I left now, Emma might never understand that emotions are sacred. She might grow up like I did, carrying too much, staying silent, thinking that love means hiding and enduring. I couldn't let that happen. I had to return, to love her, but this time with presence. No more hiding, no more avoiding, no more pretending to be strong. And maybe, just maybe, what made me choose to return wasn't only Emma. It was you. It was every person like me who once thought they weren't enough, who once believed that weakness was failure, who smiled through the ache just to avoid being a burden. I came back to tell you this. You are not wrong for feeling hurt. You simply need to learn how to hold that pain without fear. In that moment, I knew When I opened my eyes, there would be pain. My body wouldn't be the same. I would have to relearn how to breathe, how to speak, how to live. But this time, I wasn't coming back just to survive. I was coming back to truly live. Do you know what it feels like to be born for the first time? This time, I did. And the first sound I heard when I opened my eyes was someone crying. But it wasn't me. It was my ex-husband, the man who no longer shared my life, but had quietly never stopped loving me, holding my hand in the ICU, weeping.
I opened my eyes, and I knew nothing from here on would ever be the same. But what you can't yet imagine is what I carried back from the other side changed my life forever. And if you stay until the end, I'll share the most powerful message I received in the light, the one that made sure I could never live the old way again. I came back with a body that was shattered, but a soul more whole than it had ever been. Yes, there was pain, physical exhaustion, strain, but underneath it all, there was something new, a foundation, a stillness, not the kind of peace that comes from surviving, but the kind that comes from truly seeing. I looked at Emma, and for the first time, I didn't force a smile to reassure her. I cried, right there in front of her. I held her in my arms and said, without hesitation, "I was so scared, but I'm not scared anymore. Because now I understand, even fear is just a part of love waiting to be seen." I began to live again, little by little, but this time I lived in rhythm with my true emotions. When I was sad, I said it. When I was tired, I stopped. When I was happy, I laughed loudly, without apology. I stopped caring whether people saw me as strong or weak. I only cared whether I was real. And then I began sharing this story, not so that anyone would admire me, but so that someone out there would stop feeling alone. Maybe that someone is you, the one watching this video wondering, am I living? Do I have the right to be soft, to be vulnerable? And the answer is yes. Not only do you have the right, you owe it to your heart. Because here's the truth. You don't have to die to learn how to live. But sometimes it takes brushing up against death to understand just how sacred life truly is. So live not to prove your strength, but to fully feel who you are. In every moment, in every tear, in every smile that shows up for no reason at all. And if this story helped you see a piece of yourself in mine, don't keep that to yourself. Someone out there might be waiting for the very light you just received. Because light always spreads from a heart that has once broken and still chooses to love again.